hit me. As hard as you can.
Happy to.
It certainly seems like we've entered the era of the tag fighter. We've got 2XKO repping 2v2 tag action, Marvel Tokon fighting Souls plans to introduce the world to a 4v4 fighter later this year, and now we have Invincible Versus representing a more familiar 3v3 structure. Developed by Quarter Up, a team comprised of much of the core group that developed 2013's fantastic Killer Instinct reboot, Invincible Versus is a fast-paced, hard-hitting, extremely mechanics-driven successor of sorts to Killer Instinct's unique style of 2D fighting. That style may be polarizing for many, and its ancillary modes are a bit underwhelming outside of an impressive, but very brief story mode. All of this makes it another tough tag fighting contender, but one that's far from While not immediately apparent just from looking at it, Invincible Versus' fighting system is actually quite unique, with the closest approximation being the aforementioned Killer Instinct. Like KI, combos are a two-way street, a mind game between the attacker and the defender in almost every interaction. The attacker needs to focus on building their combo while keeping an eye on a meter to make sure that it doesn't fill up all the way. Otherwise, that combo will drop. The person getting comboed wants to keep an eye on that meter too, because as it fills up, the other player is going to want to look to reduce it, and the main way to do that is by tagging their teammate in. However, if the defender is able to react to that tag before they get hit, they can execute a counter tag, which will halt the combo and reset the situation back to a neutral state. But here's where the mind game comes in.
Think, Mark!
Let's say I'm comboing my opponent and I think they might use a counter tag. I can either delay my tag and try to throw off their timing, or I can do a hard call out by feinting the tag altogether, which will leave my opponent wide open if they fell for the bait. On the flip side of that though, if they don't actually go for the counter tag, then I'm the one that gets left completely vulnerable and the tables turn. When all of this works as intended in a match between two players that both know about the existence of this little minigame, meaning they played the tutorial, it's awesome. Successfully baiting out that counter tag with a feint is incredibly satisfying, and it's also nice to feel like you still have a chance to escape a long combo if you're able to make the right reads. Counter tags aren't the only way to break combos either. If you're desperate, or the opponent simply isn't tagging to even give you the opportunity, you could use an assist breaker. But that does come at the steep cost of 2 bars of meter, a lengthy cooldown on your assists, and 50% of the health of one of your assist characters, which will refill as long as you're not tagged in. To be blunt, I hate this mechanic in its current state. In most fighting games, this kind of get out of jail free card is only usable once a round, or maybe even once every 2 rounds, because being able to break out of an opponent's combo is incredibly strong. But here, not only is it uncapped, each character has 3 bars of meter that are full right from the start. What that often means is I'll start a combo, they'll assist break, we'll fight for a bit while their assists are on cooldown, and maybe I'll manage to land a snapback to forcibly tag their partner in and permanently remove that life. So far so good. But then, the second that cooldown is up and I start a new combo, they just do another assist break because their other characters have been patiently waiting with 3 full bars of their own. Granted, this likely won't happen against opponents who understand that they are literally killing their own characters every time they break a combo this way. But whenever I was matched up against someone who didn't realize this, which was very common throughout both the open beta and the limited pre-launch time that I got online with the full game, it just dragged out the match. Dragging out the match is additionally frustrating because when the timer runs out, the person with the most combined health among their characters doesn't just win the match. Instead, there's a sudden death between the 2 active characters where their health bars are restored based on the life of the remaining inactive fighters, and both players are afflicted by constant damage over time. It just feels kind of bad to have the lead when the time runs out, and then still potentially lose the whole thing based on one interaction.
Learn your place.
As for how the action actually feels, it's pretty stiff. It's very much in the same vein as Mortal Kombat and Killer Instinct, so you'll probably feel right at home if you're used to those games. But as someone who prefers the smoother movement and animations of games like Guilty Gear Strive, 2XKO, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, and Street Fighter 6, it did take me quite a while to warm up to how characters in Invincible Versus get around. On the plus side, Quarter Up did a really great job of making the 18 fighters that are available at launch feel like their TV show counterparts. The ones that are supposed to feel fast feel light and fast.
Hell yeah!
And the ones that are supposed to hit hard hit extremely hard.
Consider this mercy!
Then you've got wild cards like Cecil, who's able to teleport around the screen like a madman and hit from just about every angle thanks to his arsenal of weaponry and army of zombie cyborgs. The sheer amount of armored moves on characters like Monster Girl and Titan can be pretty obnoxious, and getting in on Rex can feel like a nightmare if he's in the hands of a good player, but in general, there's a great spread of distinct and interesting playstyles.
Whoopsie!
Dad, please. You don't want to do this.
I came to this planet for one reason: to conquer it.
If you're an Invincible fan first and foremost, you'll be happy to know that there's a full-on story mode here that features an original story co-written by Quarter Up's narrative director Mike Rogers and Helen Lay, who's a writer and producer on the Amazon Prime show, along with involvement from series creator Robert Kirkman. That authenticity goes a long way in making this compact campaign feel a bit like a filler episode of the actual show that was never aired. A quick warning that I'll avoid spoilers for the story, but there will be some unavoidable ones from the show for those who haven't seen at least the first few seasons. But you really need that context to appreciate what's going on here in general. It begins with a strange scene. Invincible in the middle of a fight with Omni-Man. Only this isn't a flashback to their season 1 showdown or anything. Omni-Man is in a traditional Viltrumite uniform, he's teamed up with Lucan and Thula, and it's hard to shake the feeling that things are just a bit off through the entire first third of the story. I won't say more than that, but it was fun to piece together things on my own as Mark tries to do so himself. The story mode is only an hour long, and while that is short by any measure, even for a fighting game campaign, it is at least well paced and the fights between various characters never feel forced. Every fight is well contextualized, makes sense narratively, and never drags down the pace of the plot. The cutscenes themselves are excellent as well, utilizing the same animation on 2 style that the Spider-Verse movies employ to great effect. Most of the voice cast from the show is accounted for and do an excellent job, and even the people brought in to cover for the actors that didn't reprise their roles are fantastic as well. Like, listen to this and tell me that doesn't sound exactly like Steven Yeun.
I looked up to you my whole life, but you were just a lying piece of shit.
The biggest issue with the story mode though isn't its length, it's the fact that it ends without a real conclusion. Again, without going into spoilers, it all wraps up on a pretty unsatisfying cliffhanger. Hopefully there's a free DLC continuation in the works, because otherwise, this is just an hour-long episode of build-up with no actual payoff. The rest of Invincible Versus meets the standards of a modern fighting game, but never exceeds them. There's a traditional arcade story mode with short, occasionally amusing character endings, but fighting against the CPU feels uniquely bad in a game that's so built around conditioning and baiting your opponent. There's a fairly basic training mode, but no combo trials and no character guides. There's a replay viewer to watch your own recent and saved matches, but no way to search for replays from other players. Nor is there a replay takeover to try to lab out a solution to a problem you encountered in a match. At least there are some cool rewards for leveling up each character. There are more than 300 customizable elements for your profile tag, covering badges, titles, backgrounds, and frames, all pulled directly from both the show and the graphic novel. The rollback netcode is also stellar, and that comes without any caveats. Every match I've played so far has been buttery smooth, both in the open beta from a few weeks ago, and during the limited amount of pre-release matches I've played against other people during this review period.
Bringing got something for you! Eat it, Jerkwad!
Invincible Versus is a very respectable 3v3 tagfire that plays unlike any other out there. Its two-way interactable combo system opens up opportunities for exciting mind games and chances to outthink and outplay your opponent, despite the action looking and feeling quite stiff. The story mode also shines as a quick and authentic filler episode of the show, though its cliffhanger ending did leave me hoping for a DLC conclusion.
Learn your place!
Reviews director Tom Marks here with Mitchell Saltzman to talk about another fighting game. I love talking about fighting games with Mitchell. You know so much about them. You reviewed 2XKO for us, Fatal Fury, Street Fighter 6, Mortal Kombat 1. You went back and reviewed Under Night In-Birth 2 this year just for the love of the game, right? So you're obviously a huge fighting game fan. I want to talk about the other half of this coin for Invincible Versus, which is, Are you a big Invincible fan?
I am an Invincible fan. This season was the first one that I watched as it was airing, so I'm not like, someone who has been there from day one. But I kind of binge watched the first 2 seasons all together, and then when season 3 came out, I was kind of late getting to it, and then binged that, and then, like I said, this season I kind of watched as it was airing. But I love it. I love that it exists in this kind of weird space of being a superhero animated, mature television show outside of the Marvel and DC bubble. So it can kind of like build its own universe and have its own lore. It's a really, really cool show, and I'm very glad it exists.
So on that note, I guess a good follow-up question is just, do you have to be an Invincible fan to like Invincible Versus? Obviously, that is sort of part of the appeal of licensed fighters like this, is the characters, you get to fight, mash your favorite dolls together or whatever, but like, also, do you think this just sort of can stand on its own for fighting game fans, tag fighters specifically, fans of Killer Instinct? Do you think it's still worth showing up for that crowd?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you are a fighting game fan, I definitely think there are things in Invincible Versus that will, get its hooks into you, especially if you like Killer Instinct. Like, I need to repeat that point. If you're a Marvel vs. Capcom fan and you're kind of itching for a 3v3 tag fighter, like, this isn't exactly the kind of game that Marvel was, but the only thing I would say that's important to be an Invincible fan for is the story mode. It is kind of a mode that kind of drops you into the middle of the canon of Invincible. You kind of have to know who Omni-Man is and his relationship to Mark in order to really understand why some of the things that are happening in the story mode are so significant. Other than that, no, if you're a fighting game fan, I think Invincible Versus could turn you into an Invincible fan.
I wanted to talk about the story mode a little bit more too, because you dig into in the review the ups and downs of it, but kind of just generally, how much weight do you personally put on a story mode when you're reviewing a fighting game? Because at least from my perspective, as somebody who doesn't really play fighting games very much, it's like such a small part of what you're actually going to be doing. Like, theoretically, you're going to spend most of your time just like online in lobbies, right? Or grinding out ranked matches or whatever. So like, or playing with your friends. Yeah.
So it's interesting. I think as I've gotten more and more into fighting games as a genre, I think I've put less stock in the importance of single player modes, just because I am playing more online. I am, more about learning how to play the game and learning these characters and learning like how to get better at the game. And story mode is something that I'll play for the first week and then probably never touch again. What I really want to see out of story games more is, a way for a developer to teach you how to play the game and get you ready for playing online without packaging it as a tutorial. That, unfortunately, is something that Invincible Versus does not do. But that's the kind of stock that I put into single player games these days, or single player modes these days. I want to see a way for developers to get people ready for the online experience in a mode that casual players are actually going to play. But other than that, it's saying that a game has like a bad story mode doesn't really affect my view of the fighting game all that much. I just want them to have something other than just the classic arcade mode where you take a character, you play like 7 rounds, and then you get an ending. I just want to see something else.
So I want to close on a question I asked you at the end of our review interview for the 2XKO review, which you can go check out if you haven't seen yet, which is, this is a unfair question because you cannot predict the future, but if in a purely speculative sense, do you think this game is going to be worth investing time in? Do you think it's going to have some amount of legs? And we don't want a self-fulfilling prophecy here of saying, no, don't spend your time on it, and then nobody does. But, and again, also, the flip of that is that 2XKO, you were relatively optimistic about, and then Riot laid off a bunch of the team, right? And so that's not something you can predict when you're doing an initial review of a game. So, with all those factors in mind,
Yeah.
how are you feeling about this game? Do you think it's one that's going to like find a community, even if that's sort of small or what have you?
I think it will find a community. You know, again, like you just said, it's hard to predict these days anything. You know, it has a season pass coming out, so you know we'll see. Here's the thing: it has a really cool combat system. It has an interesting combat system that's unlike anything else available right now. It's fun. I think when you're playing it against people who know what they're doing, it's very fun. So it's just a matter of will people stick around, you know, for the long run.
And to that end, not every fighting game has to be Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter,
Yeah.
right? Like there's plenty of room for small games with small communities to just be happily existing.
Yeah, and this is going to be a game at EVO this year, so you know it's coming out of the gate with a really large platform that it gets to show its high-level play on. So that's, you know, working in its favor. Obviously, I have a feeling it's going to be at EVO for at least 2 more years. So we'll have to see from there. I think at the very least, it's not going to be a case of like after the first year the developer just pulls their support. I think this is a game that they're investing in to at least a degree where we'll get at least maybe 2 or 3 season passes, and we'll have to see what happens from there.
Well, Mitchell, thank you so much again for chatting with us a little bit more about this one. Always a pleasure to pick your brains about fighting games because you know so much I never will about them, to be frank. If you want more from Mitchell, you can go back and watch his review of 2XKO. We had another chat about kind of fighting games in general at the end of that one. Or if you want a very different type of competitive game, we reviewed Pokemon Champions recently, which is that Pokemon battling mobile game. And for everything else, stick with IGN.